A lot happened in 2025, big political swings, stubborn inflation, tariffs, market swings, all sorts of good stuff. So let's unpack the year and talk about some things to think about of what was and what's coming. This is Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts.
Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist, Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with Phil and myself as we talk investing, finance, retirement. And Phil, what happened in 2025 and did it matter and how does it affect things? And kind of a year in review, yeah?
Pretty eventful year, but yeah.
A little bit.
Always good this time of year to take a look back and, see what happened, see how it affected you.
Yeah, very true.
Other things that were, maybe you reacted the wrong way that if you had it to do over, you'd to do again, so.
Very true. So little year in review action. And of course, as a CPA, you definitely look at the year prior, but you also look forward because you're a personal financial specialist as well. So you're kind of always looking at, the past and the future, kind of getting things done. So let's kind of talk about some of these pieces. We'll break it down a little bit. So let's start with Liberation Day, Phil. Back in April, tariffs are going to just destroy everything, and it's going to be the worst market ever. At the time we're talking, right now, at the beginning of December, it's at 68.38, the S&P 500, which, is a little off its high, but it's only said it's high like a month ago.
Right. Yeah, so it ended up being a really good year. So, but, talking back in April, everyone would have thought that the sky was falling, and it did for a while. I mean, it fell pretty precipitously for a very short period of time, but then recovered. So,
well, it's been a choppy year, but year to date right now, it's at about 16.5%. I think most of us will take that.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, not a bad year. So
not a bad year, but we've had a lot of good years strung together. And so, you still want to be wary of your allocation, your risk tolerance, all those kinds of things.
Right. Yes. I mean, to me, Liberation Day was one of those things that is a good reminder that you're going to have volatility. It doesn't always happen when and how you might be thinking. But to maybe take a step back and just relax. So had a few calls from clients as we were approaching that, and it's like, okay, did we do anything? And my recommendation is no, let's just hold on. We've gone through something similar to this before. Not as bad, not as many tariffs and as broad reaching as this one was. But at the end of the day, now looking back, that was the right call, right? I mean, just wade through it. I mean, you're going to have market reactions, but if you tried to react and get out of the market, you always got to try to get back in. And because this was such a quick down and then back up, chances are you would have made the wrong decision to do that. So
yeah, I mean, at what, 20% at some point, right?
Yeah.
Different indices and so on and so forth. It definitely weeds out people who are a little nervous, right? But again, if you've got a strategy, Phil, and you're planning, these are long-term monies. And that's the problem. That's always the mental hurdle is to go, it's okay. Even if you're almost retired, I probably don't need these monies for at least another 15 years, right? So it's kind of hard to convince your brain to calm down.
Well, even in retirement, so we have the way we plan, we've got the later bucket money because, the reality is when you're in retirement, hopefully you're in retirement for 20 plus years. For most people. So you're going to need money that's going to, from a long-term standpoint, grow to keep up with inflation. With that money, you're going to have some volatility. So you just have to take that mindset and understand that, that money is there. We've got to, ride through some of the ups and downs. Don't look at it on bad days. There's nothing we're going to do when it happens. Nothing you can do to control it. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of inflation, the president and Powell were in a bit of a they're a bit of a pissing contest the entire year. Yep. Right. And inflation was persistent. And of course, Powell said the tariffs were going to make inflation persistent. We still were dealing with it. There were places where things started getting better, but at the same time, it also was very slow moving and kind of stiff. And it's still that way a little bit. We may or may not see a December cut. Well, they're not meeting just yet, so we'll see.
Right. Yeah. Inflation has started to drop throughout the year, then kind of leveled off and has started to creep back up just a little bit. So we'll see. Inflation has to be part of your plan. The levels we're at today aren't a plan to be a disaster to your plan. But there's a lot of people that, unfortunately, because we went through such a long period of time where inflation was so low, that kind of ignored it. I think most people now going through the 2022 timeframe and beyond and having that higher inflation rate have realized, okay, yeah, there will be long-term inflation, so you have to plan for it. So somewhere in your plan, you've got to make sure you have that income adjustments that you can make along the way to keep up with inflation. Social Security, it's a great example because it never fully keeps up with inflation, but does a pretty good job. If you look at the cost of living adjustments that somebody received for Social Security during that same time frame, they were significantly higher than the average of what Social Security has done. So somewhere in your plan, you have to have built out an expectation for inflation, and how are you going to keep up with that? So,
and you got to have it anyway, Phil, right? So you were talking about not getting a lot of panic, from investors or from clients because they've got a strategy when dealing with the market volatility of this year. What about the inflation, right? I've talked with advisors across the country, and a lot of them had more people concerned that inflation was wrecking their retirement than the market.
Yeah, we didn't really have that many clients that were concerned with that. We built that into the plan again, that we're going to have inflation adjustments along the way. And the later bucket, that is more aggressively invested. It's meant for that long-term growth. So that's where we're able to keep up with this longer-term inflation like this. The kind of the average inflation, the 2.5–3% range. That's should be built into your plan. We're going to see that on average. Years below that for sure, years above that, just like the markets, right? You have an average return, but you're never at that average. It's always up and above or below that average is how things happen. So you got that volatility.
With the rates staying higher and the Fed not cutting them most of the year, high yield savings accounts stayed strong.
Yeah.
Where do they fit in? Do they fit in plans?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great emergency fund, or like that money you need in the next year. It's been a great place for that safe, secure type money. And you're earning a relatively decent interest rate on it. Now we have started to see those fall as well, as the anticipation was there for Fed cutting rates and them cutting it a couple of times. So we started to see that pull back.
Gotcha.
So it definitely is part of a plan, or should be part of a plan. But is it, where, oh yeah, all the money should be there? No, it's, right now it's just looking it up at bank rate, and you're in the fours, 4.1, 4.05 is kind of around where it's been, so yeah, that's a decent rate, right?
Safe but productive.
Right? Safe but productive. And the funny thing and I've had this discussion with clients this year, because we're in one of those anomaly type scenarios where at this moment, you can earn more in the bank than what inflation is today. But
that's rare.
Well, but these are, I reminded clients that if you look back though, when all this first started, rates in interest rates in the bank always lag the inflation, right?
Right.
So when we were hitting the 9% plus inflation, you didn't get anywhere near that in the bank. Banks at that point were still paying 0.5%, 1%. It took them a good year before things really started to catch up. Well, now we're on the tail end of that, where inflation has started to cool down, but the rates still, they dropped from what they were, because they were 5+.
Right.
So now we're down into the 4s. So you're going to start to, or continue to see these drop over time. So again, bottom line, where do they fit? Great. Kind of reserve emergency fund type money, or that money you might be using in this next year. Yeah. But don't lose sight of the longer term big picture, that this is still not the place that you should have all your money. So
the house always wins, right? They might have lost for a little while, but they might be losing right now, but they gained on it in the front side, right?
It will come back around. Yep.
Yeah. So all right. Well, we moved our way through the year. We got to July, and the OBBA came out. Yeah. So, right. So obviously this was the biggie of the year, all the financial stuff. And we did several shows on the One Big Beautiful Bill, right? But just as a revision, right? So how have you seen things shaking out since July with it?
I mean, it's good. To me, the biggest takeaway out of that, the OBABA, was the fact that now we have some certainty, right? We know what the rates are. At least there's no expiration date on them. Let's put it that way. And I always joke with clients. I said they're permanent, as permanent as tax laws can be, until Congress decides to change them again.
I mean, they're not fickle up in Washington, are they?
Not at all. Not at all. They got to have something to do, right? They got to come up with new bills. So.
Yeah, for all the money they get paid, they got to do something other than be children. Anyway,
that's right. So that was to me probably the biggest takeaway of it. And there's a lot of different opportunities and things to consider in there. We're working through that with clients now at year end of, the fact that like your SALT deductions, those are a much higher deduction now, but there's phase outs on those still. And, this additional $6,000 per individual over age 65, that's a great extra benefit, but again, phase out. So there's all these benefits that are in there. A lot of those they all have these expiration dates though, so
have you guys
kind of short term, but
have you guys been making tweaks to plans and strategies throughout the year that will, obviously that'll continue in the next year?
Yeah. So now that we know what the rates are going forward, we've got a little bit longer term clear picture of what this tax landscape looks like. We're rerunning everyone's plan now just to say, okay, now that we know what the rates are and have a good idea, let's rerun it just to make sure we're still on track. Yeah. Again, still something we want to look at next year, but it really hasn't changed the long-term trajectory for most clients. It's still similar process because the anticipation was we were probably going to be here anyways at some point getting this extension. Just how long and what exactly it looked like was the big question.
The Tax Smart Retiree is your comprehensive guide to mastering tax efficiency for a flourishing retirement. You will find indispensable advice and actionable strategies designed to enhance tax savings, maximize Social Security benefits, protect against market volatility, and develop a customized retirement plan. To get your free ebook, click the link in the show notes of today's episode and download your copy of the Tax Smart Retiree right now.
Well, we get to October, November, we have the record 43-day shutdown, and I know that, a lot of people are like, hey, I'm not a government employee, so therefore it really didn't affect me. And unless, of course, you're like travel disruptions, things of that nature. Right. Obviously, it's a lot of, there's a lot of news and headlines, but it does affect a lot of people. In general, does it reveal something about emergency fund needs? I feel like, to me, this is like COVID a couple years ago, in a way where people get caught off guard and they go, wow, I wish I had more money put away in this emergency fund for a prolonged event.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, emergency funds as you get into retirement, if you think of why there was an emergency fund or why you had one anyways, I'm going to have a loss of my job and I'm trying to find another position. So
maybe more pre-retiree than retiree.
Right. Yeah. Once you get into retirement, you should have an income plan put in place that shouldn't be affected by market conditions like this. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need some emergency money set aside. It's always a good idea to have reserves just in case, right? The roof starts leaking, you need to fix it. All these bigger expenses that come up, just get them done, have some place that you can pay for that easily, and then figure out how does that fit in kind of the long-term picture to replenish some of those funds. So, I mean, that to me is where those fit in. But the government shutdown is, to me, one of those things, again, just know they happen. I mean, this isn't the first go around, so
they're already talking about like January or February of being an issue. And it's like you just did a little something. And I guess part of it's around the ACA stuff. And it's like, oh, for these people, man.
Yeah, all they did is put a quick Band-Aid on it to get us, a few more months. And we're going to have this, right? The thing with the government shutdown is we do have history to look back. And there were several pieces that came out during the shutdown to say, hey, look, this isn't the first time. If you look back at what happened to the markets during past government shutdowns, it really had no effect.
Okay.
It's volatile. It's unsettling. It's one of those. I think
we set the record too, did we?
We did. Yeah. So when's it going to end? And all these different things. But
it's like Wall Street doesn't care anymore because it's like they do this crap so often. They're like, we don't care.
That's right. They've built it in, right? They know at the end of the day they're going to get it figured out. Everyone's going to come back and we're going to continue on. So it's a little blip. It gets a little bit unsettling. to me, the bigger piece of it was just, maybe there was some things you had to deal with, like travel.
Yeah. And the people that obviously do get affected, obviously, it hits them different. Certainly.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you are
they're sick of it for sure.
Absolutely. Then the reserve and emergency funds and all those kind of things need to be part of your plan, because this scenario, the government shutdown type scenario, is becoming more and more common.
Yeah, for sure.
So it is an unfortunate event, but it is what it is. So
in a pretty raucous year, did you feel the need to make any big sweeping changes to people's strategies or plans?
No. I mean, at the end of the day, there was a lot of noise, right? I mean, the tariffs, and there were still kind of some uncertainty around what's going to happen with that. But at the end of the day, it didn't affect the markets and the economies like everyone thought it would be. Right. Companies have figured it out, and they're kind of working through this. The same thing with the government shutdown and then different things that have happened. We're going to have events like this not every year, hopefully, but I mean, definitely several
times. It seems to be the norm.
Well, it's starting to get a little bit more common, but yeah. You're going to have volatility. It's not, investing isn't like putting money in the bank where, you can watch paint dry, so to speak. It just slowly goes along.
That's the thing, right?
You're going to have the ups and downs, and you have to be comfortable with that, understand it, have that built into the plan in the money position that's at risk like that and volatile, to where it's not money you're going to need today.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, the headlines are going to happen. We can't control any of what's going on. And think about it this way, and we all know this, but again, it's trying to convince our brain. Investing in long-term plans and strategies for your future, it's not supposed to be exciting. It's not supposed to be sexy, but you can't sell boring on the news, right?
Right. They have to sell advertising.
So they have to keep it like, oh my God, so the headlines, the headlines might look different, but the same drama will probably happen throughout the year. So what can you do, right? Control the controllable, right?
Right.
Work on your habits, work on your debt structures, work on your things that you need to do, and have a strategy in place, especially if you're a pre-retiree, getting close to retirement. Obviously, if you're retired and you didn't put a plan together, you still could, right? You should maybe do that, right?
Yep, definitely. So, no better time than today to get that plan started if you haven't, as a retiree.
And we didn't even talk about the healthcare side of things. That's a whole nother massive wrinkle. So, at the end of the day, we've got to plan for the things that we need to be able to plan for, because the rest of it is just stuff we can't control, right? So,
control the controllable. Make sure you've got those structures built into your plan. Know that we're going to have this. And unfortunately, with the advent of, the way information flies around today, and it just happens faster every day, you're going to be bombarded with information. So it has to be, again, control from your standpoint to realize, hey, does this really matter? Number one, is it something I can control in my scenario?
Yeah.
Should I react to it, and then take that approach as you go to your plan. And if you don't have an advisor to maybe help bounce some of these ideas off from, or talk this through, maybe that's your first step, is get somebody you can work these things through, so you're not yourself emotionally reacting and, feeling like the sky is falling and, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to go back to work, or whatever the case is. So,
you got to watch that language out there. They love to use words like rocketed, plummeted, so on and so forth. And it's like 2%, like not even 2%, it's like 0.2%, things of that nature. So get a strategy, get a plan, and get a little piece. And we'll see you next time here on Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. If you need some help, there's links in the show descriptions below. Make sure you reach out to Phil or a qualified professional and talk about your strategy so that you're not overreacting to the headlines and the news. And we'll see you next time here on the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. We'll catch you later.
Phil? Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.